In the previous lesson, we saw how we can parse JSON into objects that our applications can use, and that was in preparation of accessing remote web services. So what we'll be doing in this lesson is accessing the Weather Underground web service. And Weather Underground provides a nice API, which is free in some cases and not so free in other cases. If you need weather data, feel free to take a look. But it has a number of objects that we can get from it, and if we just want to look at current conditions in any city, we can use this kind of web call. And it'll give us a response that's JSON that looks something like this. And you can see there's a lot of data in here. There are also various formats of this call. We can use latitude and longitude instead of a city name, and that's what we'll be doing. You can also see there are a number of other features that we can get as well for data, but we're going to stick with current conditions. So moving to our project, what we'd simply like in this case is just to display some text about the weather and some temperature, and we have a button to get that weather. Moving to the view controller, we have our Weather Underground API, and we do need a Weather Underground key. When the Get Weather button is touched, we're going to call our Get Weather for location, and we're going to pass in a latitude and longitude. And now we'll get to the business of actually accessing the web service. And although I'm using Weather Underground, this process is basically the same for all web services. We're going to start with a URL string. And of course, this URL string will vary depending upon what web service you call. And it may have different parameters that get passed along into that string, or you may also have to pass JSON data as a post package. In our case, we just need to do a URL string, and we're going to pass in our Weather Underground key, the latitude, and the longitude into that URL string. We convert the string into an NSURL. And then we call NSData with the contents of the URL, and that will actually do the URL call for us. So that will access the remote server and hopefully give us back some weather data. Now we'd like to serialize that data. So we're going to get a dictionary of weather results, and we're going to serialize that using NSJSON serialization, JSON object with data, pass in our weather data, and again, we're looking for mutable containers. In particular, we're going to be looking for the response key in that weather results container. And that should be an NS dictionary. Let me go back to the response so you can see that. You can see we have the response key. And then within the response key, we have a number of other items. So if my response key has an error, we've had a problem. And we might want to report the problem exactly, or we may just want to give a generic error message. In this case, I'm just doing an NS log. So hopefully we won't get any errors, which means in our response dictionary, we'll have another dictionary called current observation. And again, taking a look at that response, you can see within the response area, I have current observation. So now I have a dictionary called current observation, and within that, I can get a temperature string and weather as a string. And I'll simply set my labels for temperature and weather using those strings. So that's all there is to it. So it's really actually pretty easy at this point to get a response from a remote web service. And as long as you know the format, you have to do a little bit of dictionary work in order to parse the JSON. So let's give that a run. And I'll get the weather. And we have a mist going at 32 degrees F. It's beautiful here in New Hampshire. So one thing I'd like to point out, when I'm doing these lessons, I try to avoid exactly this, having warnings. But in this case, I wanted to let you know that the dictionary does exist. So there's an error dictionary here, and the warning is saying, well, you never actually used any of the values in the error dictionary, which is true because I just logged a generic error message. If I was going to create this application, I might either fix the warning, like suggested, or I might use the error dictionary to provide a little bit more error information one way or the other, either by logging it or perhaps sending it in some useful way to the user. So we're going to let that warning fly for a little bit, but we'll try to avoid them in the future. So that's how we can access a remote web service. And I'm sure that you'll be doing that a lot. The uses for accessing remote data are really as many as applications can be. If you have a social networking application, you'll need remote data to track down the users, perhaps send messages to them, chat with them, get photos, that kind of stuff. If you're doing something like a trucking logistics app, you'll need, of course, to be able to have web services to track where the trucks are. If you're doing an e-commerce app, you'll need web services to be able to get inventory and stock items and pricing information, and then be able to also, of course, call in sales. So web services are really important in terms of actual business applications, and even applications that are for fun. So you probably end up using this kind of code quite a bit. The good news is that it's fairly easy to write at this point, not like the old days. So have fun with that.